The mixer was crowded, the kind of event where people pretended to network, but in reality, they just exchanged polite smiles and checked their phones for escape routes. I wasn't interested in being there. But the invitation had come from my boss, who, much to my surprise, was none other than Kara. When I saw her across the room, my heart lurched. She hadn't changed, at least not on the surface. Kara was still the woman who could make heads turn without trying, who wore her confidence like a crown. The same smile, the same radiant energy that had once lit up my world. But there was a chill to her that I couldn't shake. A distance that wasn't there when we were together. That smile wasn't for me. I knew it now. It had been a long time since I'd seen it directed at me. We hadn't spoken in over a year. The divorce was still fresh in my mind, like an open wound that refused to heal. I had loved her with everything I had, and she had betrayed me with everything she was. I didn't want to think about the reasons we ended, about the lies, the secrets, the betrayal, but it was impossible not to. And here I was, standing in the same room as her, trying to look casual while every nerve in my body screamed in protest. I shifted on my feet, adjusting the glass of wine in my hand, though it did little to calm the tightness in my chest. I hadn't expected to see her here. She had been just another distant memory, like a name I couldn't quite remember when I tried to move on. But now, she is my boss. A woman who had once been my everything was now the one who signed my paycheck, and that made everything more complicated than it had ever been before. Kara hadn't just left me. She had destroyed everything we'd built together. She had made a decision, and I had been the last to know. I had been blindsided by the news of her affair, the affair that had shattered my trust in her, and in myself. It was never just the affair itself. It was the way she looked me in the eye, days later, and pretended everything was fine. As if she hadn't just ripped my heart out and crushed it beneath her feet. That was the worst part. The betrayal. The fact that she thought I wouldn't notice the hollow smile she gave me when she said goodbye. Her betrayal had not only cost us our marriage, but it had cost me my peace of mind. I didn't know who I was anymore without her. I was lost. I had poured everything into trying to rebuild my life after she left, and yet, every step forward was tangled with memories of her. I caught her looking at me again, this time, her gaze lingering longer than it should have. Her lips tightened into a thin line, and I couldn't read the expression in her eyes. Something flickered there, uncertainty, perhaps, but it was gone before I could place it. She turned back to the group she was talking to, but the damage had already been done. That brief look had hit me harder than I cared to admit. I took a deep breath and made my way across the room, pretending I wasn't about to break into a cold sweat. As I approached, Kara's eyes flicked toward me once more, and her smile froze. I could see her stiffen. She straightened her shoulders, regaining her professional composure. Her eyes held no warmth, only a cold recognition, a slight acknowledgement that I was still there. "Jack," she said, her voice polite, distant. "I didn't expect to see you here." I offered a half smile, one that didn't reach my eyes. "I didn't expect to be here either," I replied, my voice sounding foreign even to myself. There was a brief, awkward silence between us, thick with all the things we hadn't said, all the things we'd buried in the past. She was still wearing the same perfume she'd worn when we were married, a scent I had once loved. Now, it only made me want to run. "How have you been?" she asked, the question hanging in the air between us, hollow. It was a question we both knew didn't carry any real concern. I hesitated, taking a sip from my glass to buy time. I didn't want to open that door again. I didn't want to be vulnerable in front of her. "I'm managing," I said, keeping my answer vague. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Managing was the polite way of saying I was drowning. Kara nodded, the slightest dip of her head, as if she understood. But how could she understand? How could she, after what she'd done to me? "I didn't think I'd see you at the office," I added, forcing a sense of nonchalance into my tone. "I guess you're enjoying your new role." Her eyes flickered, a small spark of something passing across her features, maybe pride, maybe guilt, but it was gone in an instant. She was a master of hiding her emotions, of wearing a mask that made everything seem perfect, even when it wasn't. "Yes," she replied coolly, "it's been an adjustment, but I'm settling in well. You know how it is." She didn't offer any further elaboration. Of course, she didn't. She never really did. Kara was always about the surface. The show. The perfection that hid everything beneath it. I wanted to ask her about everything, the affair, the lies, the way she had shattered everything we had. I wanted to make her feel the weight of the betrayal. But instead, I smiled tightly and nodded. "Well, I'm sure things are going well for you." "It's nice to see you again, Kara," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. She gave me a polite smile, the one she saved for strangers. "You too, Jack," she replied, her gaze not meeting mine for more than a second. The conversation ended there, and just like that, we both turned away, retreating into the crowd of colleagues. The mixer continued around us, the buzz of chatter and music filling the spaces where words should have been. But all I could hear was the silence that followed her words. The emptiness between us that no one else could see. I couldn't escape the feeling that this was never just about business anymore. The tension in the room, in her voice, in the way she refused to look me in the eye, it was personal. We were no longer just exes. We were two people trapped in a past that neither of us had fully let go of. And as much as I wanted to escape this moment, I couldn't. I couldn't ignore her any longer. The room might have been full of people, but it felt as if we were the only two left. She was my boss now. The woman who had torn my heart apart was the one I had to answer to. It was a sickening irony that I couldn't shake. And somewhere deep down, I knew that this wasn't over. It couldn't be. Not until everything came out. Not until the truth, the lies, and the betrayal found their resolution. But for now, all I could do was take another sip of my wine, breathe deeply, and try to ignore the overwhelming ache in my chest. I remember the first time I saw Kara. It wasn't anything special, really. Just another afternoon at a mutual friend's party, a room full of people talking over each other, glasses clinking, the usual noise. But when I saw her, it felt like everything else went silent. She was standing near the window, the late afternoon sun catching in her hair, casting a warm, golden halo around her. She was talking with some friends, laughing, but the moment I caught her eyes, dark brown, full of something I couldn't quite name, I knew I had to meet her. I wasn't one to believe in fate, but in that moment, it sure felt like destiny had tossed me a bone. "Hey," I said, walking up to her, trying to sound casual. "Mind if I interrupt?" She looked me over, her gaze assessing but not cold, more curious than anything. "Depends," she replied, a playful edge in her voice. "What's your excuse?" I smiled. I was wondering if I could ask the most important question of the evening. She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "All right, hit me." I hesitated, pretending to be more serious than I felt. "Do you believe in love at first sight, or should I walk by again?" Her laughter was like music, light and infectious. It eased the tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying. "I think you're going to have to walk by again," she said, still grinning, but the sparkle in her eyes gave me hope. It wasn't love at first sight, not exactly. But it felt like it could be. From that moment on, I was hooked. We spent the rest of the evening talking, laughing about the most ridiculous things, connecting in ways I hadn't connected with anyone before. I felt like I'd known her forever, and maybe that was the problem. We moved fast. I don't know why, but we did. There was no hesitation, no doubt. Just a growing sense that we were meant to be together. Every time I saw her, it felt like the universe was telling me to take the next step. We'd been married for 2 years when I thought I finally understood what love meant. Not the fairy tale kind, but the real thing, working through issues, laughing through the bad days, and even when things got tough, we had each other. I think the hardest part of the divorce was realizing that I had been living in a dream world. That the person I thought I knew, the woman who had shared her hopes, her fears, her dreams with me, wasn't the same person who had walked out the door. One evening, just before everything fell apart, I remember we were sitting on the couch in our apartment, her head on my chest, the quiet hum of the city just outside our window. It felt like a perfect moment, one of those times when everything just feels right. She had been quiet for a while, and I hadn't noticed at first. "Jack," she said, breaking the silence, her voice soft. "Do you think we've changed?" I looked down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she sighed. "I feel like we've lost something. Like the spark we had in the beginning." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't noticed it, at least not consciously. There had been the usual arguments, the small disappointments that come with any long-term relationship, but nothing that felt insurmountable. Or so I thought. I leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Maybe we've just gotten comfortable," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "But we're still here, right? Together." Her smile was faint, unsure. "Yeah. Together." We didn't talk about it much after that. But looking back, I should have known something was off. That was the first crack in our relationship, the first time she said something that made me question us, and I didn't listen. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't realize that Kara had been pulling away, bit by bit. The more I tried to hold on, the further she slipped through my fingers. I guess I was too naive, too wrapped up in the comfort of routine to see the warning signs. I was blinded by my love for her, a love that now felt like a naive dream, one that crumbled in the face of reality. But there had been moments, so many moments, when we were good. When everything felt right, when I thought we had it all figured out. Our anniversary, when we went to that small Italian restaurant we loved. I had surprised her with tickets to Paris, the place she'd always wanted to visit. We spent hours in bed, tangled in each other's arms, whispering about our future, about growing old together. I held on to those memories when the betrayal came. I thought, this is love. This is what it's supposed to feel like. And I didn't want to believe anything else. I should have known she was falling out of love long before I found out about the affair. The late nights at work. The distant looks. The secretive phone calls. She had been slipping away from me in ways I hadn't been able to see until it was too late. The night I found out was the night everything changed. Kara had been out for one of her late meetings, and I had come home early from work. It was supposed to be a surprise. I had planned to make her favorite dinner, chicken parmesan, and just enjoy the evening together. But when I walked into our bedroom, my world shattered. There, on our bed, was her phone. And on the screen, a text message from someone named M. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place, same time. I love you." I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the words, trying to process what I was seeing. I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath me. It was as if I were floating, disconnected from the reality of what was happening. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone, reading the message again. I heard her keys in the door just as I dropped the phone to the bed. I couldn't look at her. I didn't want to know. "Kara," I said, my voice tight with emotion, "who is M?" She froze in the doorway, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. I had never been the confrontational type. I wasn't a man who raised his voice. But at that moment, I couldn't contain the storm inside me. I can explain," she stammered, but I wasn't listening. I didn't want to hear her explanations. I didn't care about the why anymore. The only thing I could hear was the truth, and the truth was that everything we'd built was a lie. "You've been seeing someone else," I said, my voice cold, detached. "How long, Kara?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered, her voice breaking. It wasn't planned. I didn't want to hurt you. But she had. She had hurt me more than she could ever understand. The betrayal was complete. And as she stood there, crying in front of me, I realized I didn't even recognize the woman I had married anymore. It was late when she came home. The door clicked shut behind her, soft as the whisper of a secret. But there was no secret left between us. I had already found the proof. I didn't know what I expected when she walked in. Maybe for her to say something that would make everything make sense, some reason that would give me closure, explain away the gut-wrenching pain I felt. But there was nothing. No explanation. Just her, standing in the doorway, looking at me with wide, terrified eyes. For the first time since I'd found her text, I felt a deep, sickening clarity. My hands trembled, the pulse in my neck throbbing with the weight of what was happening. I didn't want this. I didn't want to face it. I wanted to pretend I had never seen the phone, never read the message, never realized the extent of what she had done. But I couldn't. I couldn't look at her without seeing the lie, the betrayal that hung between us like a thick, suffocating fog. Kara stepped inside slowly, almost cautiously, as if testing the waters to see if the storm would break. I stood still in the living room, unable to move, like a statue caught in a moment of time. Every muscle in my body was tight with the weight of the truth that we both knew was coming. She took a step forward, her eyes not meeting mine. "Jack, please, let me explain," she began, her voice shaky, desperate. I couldn't even look at her. The betrayal was too raw. "Explain what?" I spat, my voice cutting through the silence like glass shattering. "Explain the lies. The late nights. The secretive messages. You've already said everything you needed to say." Her face twisted with pain, but there was a flicker of something else behind her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Guilt? Or was it just a mask, another layer of the woman I no longer recognized? "I didn't mean for this to happen, Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you." I shook my head. The words felt hollow. "You didn't mean to hurt me. Kara, you've been sleeping with someone else. You've been lying to me for months. How could you think you wouldn't hurt me?" Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't move to wipe them away. She just stood there, frozen in place, her chest heaving with every shallow breath she took. "I'm sorry," she said, the words sounding rehearsed, like a script she had practiced in her mind. "I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you, Jack. But I've been so lost, and I didn't know how to find my way back." There it was, the excuse. The confession. The half-hearted apology that wouldn't bring back the pieces of me she had broken. I took a step toward her, my jaw clenched, my hands trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "Lost?" I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "You were lost. So you slept with someone else? That's your answer? What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Her lips trembled as she looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I wasn't happy," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I haven't been for a long time." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. They felt like a punch to the gut. Not just because of what they meant, but because of how long she had kept them buried. How long she had pretended that everything was fine while she was already plotting her escape. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to hurt her the way she had hurt me. But instead, I just stood there, feeling as if the ground had been ripped out from under me. Everything that had once felt so solid, our love, our life, the plans we made, was suddenly nothing more than a fragile house of cards, toppled by one single betrayal. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice cold, distant, a reflection of the numbness that was spreading inside me. "Who's the one who got to take my place? Who's the one you chose over me?" She flinched, a sharp breath escaping her lips. Jack, please. I don't want to talk about him. Of course you don't, I said, my voice bitter. You don't want to talk about him because you're ashamed. But you should be. You should be ashamed of what you've done. I didn't want to hurt you, she repeated, the words falling from her lips like an automatic response, a broken record. I didn't want to hurt you, but I interrupted her, stepping closer, needing to get closer to the truth. But you did. You didn't just hurt me, Kara. You destroyed everything we had. I gave you everything, and this is what I get in return. She trembled under my gaze, her tears spilling freely now, but I couldn't bring myself to care about them. I couldn't bring myself to feel anything but the deep, gnawing emptiness inside me. She opened her mouth, as if to speak, but I stopped her with a wave of my hand. Don't try to justify it. You don't get to justify this. You chose him. You chose someone else over the life we were building together. Don't pretend it was a mistake, because it wasn't. You made a choice. I could see it now, the realization in her eyes that nothing she could say would make this better, nothing she could do would fix the damage. The tears flowed harder, but they felt like a distant thing, like something that belonged to someone else. Someone who wasn't standing in front of me. I was scared, she said, almost inaudibly. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to fix it. I shook my head, the tears I hadn't let myself cry now welling up, threatening to spill over. There's nothing to fix anymore, Kara. It's over. And with those words, I felt it. The finality of it. The crushing weight of everything that had been lost. The betrayal was no longer just a word. It was something I could feel in every bone, in every breath. It was something I would carry with me for the rest of my life. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. In her place was a stranger who had betrayed me in the most intimate, destructive way. I turned and walked away. I couldn't stay. I couldn't look at her anymore. The love that had once filled this house, the laughter, the quiet moments, the shared dreams, was gone, replaced by a silence so heavy it pressed on my chest. As I reached the door, I heard her voice calling after me, broken and desperate. Jack, please, don't leave. Don't go. But I couldn't go back. Not this time. And as I stepped out into the night, the cold air felt like a slap against my face, as if the world was reminding me that there was no going back. That I had been betrayed. That everything I thought I knew had been a lie. I didn't know where I was going. I walked, and then I walked some more, my feet pounding against the concrete, trying to outrun the storm of emotions that was threatening to drown me. The night air was sharp, biting at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the cold I felt inside. Nothing could numb the pain of what had just happened, not even the chill that wrapped around me like a second skin. I couldn't believe it. Kara had done this to me. She had torn apart everything we'd built together, everything I had poured my soul into, like it was nothing. For what? For some fleeting affair? For something that meant nothing? I clenched my fists so tight, my nails dug into my palms, but it didn't bring any relief. There was nothing that could fix this, nothing that could undo what had been done. The taste of betrayal was bitter in my mouth, so bitter that it felt like I could choke on it. I wanted to scream. To shout into the night sky, to throw something, anything, against the wall until it shattered into a million pieces. But I didn't. Instead, I walked. I didn't know where, but I couldn't stay in that apartment. I couldn't be anywhere near her, near the place that had once felt like home. The place that now felt like a prison. I kept thinking about the look in Kara's eyes when she had tried to explain herself, when she had begged for my forgiveness. But I couldn't listen to her. I couldn't hear her words anymore. What was there to forgive? She had made her choice, and I had nothing left for her. Not love. Not trust. Not even the faintest glimmer of hope that this could be fixed. I passed the park we used to walk through on weekends, the same park where we had shared so many quiet moments, just walking, talking about the future. I remembered the last time we had been there, not long before everything fell apart. She leaned into me as we sat on the bench, her head resting on my shoulder, whispering about our future together. About the house we were going to buy. The children we were going to have. The words felt like a joke now. A cruel joke. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I checked it, but I already knew what it was. Kara. Her name flashed on the screen like a warning sign, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't want to hear her voice, not now, not after everything she had done. I turned the phone face down, ignoring it. I couldn't let myself be distracted. I couldn't go back to her. The streetlights cast long shadows on the sidewalk, and I stopped in front of a bench, taking a seat, finally letting myself breathe. I was exhausted. Physically, emotionally, every part of me felt like it had been drained. But there was something else, something under the exhaustion, something that I hadn't yet acknowledged. Rage. It simmered beneath the surface, growing every time I thought about her betrayal. I wasn't sure what to do with it. There was this raw, visceral desire to make her feel what I felt. To make her pay for what she had done to me. But I didn't want to become someone else. I didn't want to become the person who would destroy her the way she had destroyed me. But I couldn't just walk away either. I couldn't let her get away with it. Not after everything. I stood up from the bench, pacing. I needed a plan. Something. Anything to give me a sense of control. I was spiraling, and if I didn't focus, if I didn't take charge of this moment, I would lose myself in the anger and the hurt. I stopped pacing and leaned against a nearby lamppost. The cold air bit at my skin, but it helped clear my head. I thought back to the night I found out about the affair. The way she had stood there, begging me to listen, to understand. The way her words had felt like a betrayal all over again. But something had shifted in me then. The anger had surged to the surface, and for a split second, I had felt it, the urge to confront him, to find the man who had taken her from me. To tear everything apart. But I had resisted it. I had resisted because I knew that wouldn't bring me peace. It wouldn't fix anything. But what if there was another way? I took a deep breath, pushing away the dark thoughts. This wasn't about revenge. It couldn't be. It wasn't about destroying her, it was about reclaiming myself. About taking back what she had stolen from me. I could feel the pieces falling into place. The plan formed slowly, like a puzzle coming together in my mind. First, I needed to confront her. No more avoiding it. I had to face her. But this time, it would be on my terms. I wasn't going to beg for answers, wasn't going to apologize for things I didn't do. This time, I would make her face the truth of what she had done. Second, I needed closure. Not just for her, but for me. It was the one thing I hadn't allowed myself to think about. I had spent so much time running from the pain, from the betrayal, but I couldn't keep doing that. I needed to know why. Not just the surface-level excuses, but the truth. What had happened between us? What had really gone wrong? And third, I had to let go. Not just of Kara, but of the person I had been before the affair. I had to stop holding on to a version of her that no longer existed. I had to stop holding on to the idea of the life we had planned, because it wasn't real anymore. It had been shattered the moment she chose him. But that didn't mean I had to let her get away with it. No. I couldn't let her off the hook. Not yet. I looked at the phone again, seeing the missed calls. A part of me wanted to call her back, to hear her out, to try and fix this. But no. I couldn't do it. Not until I was ready. I turned and started walking again, the cold air feeling more like a wake-up call now. I wasn't just walking away from her, I was walking toward something new. Something I hadn't had the courage to face until now. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger, it wasn't going to control me anymore. The plan was simple: confrontation, closure, and then, when I was strong enough, I'd let it go. It wasn't going to be easy. Nothing about this was easy. But I had to do it. For me. And somehow, in the midst of the chaos, I knew that this was my moment to take back control. The air in our apartment felt thick when I walked through the door. It was no longer the place I used to come home to. No longer the place where I shared my life, my dreams, with Kara. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air, mixing with the stale feeling of unspoken words. I had avoided this moment long enough, but tonight, I couldn't escape it. I couldn't delay it any longer. Kara was sitting on the couch when I entered, her hands nervously folded in her lap. She looked at me, her eyes wide and searching, like she was waiting for something, waiting for me to say something. Anything. But there was nothing to say. Not yet. I want the truth, I said, my voice firm, but colder than I intended. My heart was still racing in my chest, but there was no room for fear now. Only the need for answers. For clarity. Kara's lips parted, but she didn't speak at first. I could see the internal struggle in her, the way her eyes flickered as she wrestled with what to say. She had gotten so good at hiding the truth, burying it beneath polite smiles and well-rehearsed excuses. But tonight, I wasn't interested in her excuses. I wanted the real story. I wanted the raw, unfiltered truth. I don't know what you want me to say, Jack, she said, her voice cracking slightly. I've already apologized. I've already told you everything. What more do you need? I stepped closer, standing over her, my shadow casting over her face. I need you to tell me why, I said, my voice low but sharp. Why did you do it? Why did you betray me? Wasn't I enough? Was everything we had just a lie? Her eyes filled with tears, and she turned her face away, unable to look me in the eye. The pain in her expression twisted something in me, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about sympathy. This was about me. About reclaiming what had been taken from me. I didn't want to hurt you, she said again, the words sounding like an automatic response. It was her go-to. The one she always used when things got hard. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I wasn't buying it anymore. The words were hollow. I had heard them 100 times before. But they didn't mean anything anymore. Didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, laughing bitterly. Is that what you tell yourself? Is that what you tell yourself every time you look in the mirror? You didn't want to hurt me, but you did. You destroyed me, Kara. You ripped my heart out and didn't even blink. Her body trembled as she looked down at her hands. The guilt was written all over her face now. The shame. But it didn't matter. The damage had already been done. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't the same person I was before the betrayal. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Why him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't just a question anymore, it was a demand. Why the affair? What did he give you that I couldn't? What was it about him that made you throw everything we had away? She flinched at the question, but this time, she didn't look away. Her eyes met mine, finally, truly meeting mine, no longer hidden behind the mask of guilt and fear. It wasn't about him, Jack, she said softly, almost too softly, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. It was about me. I was lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know who I was with you. I stared at her, trying to process the words. For the longest time, I had convinced myself that the affair had been about him. About her choosing someone else. But the truth, the one that cut deeper than anything else, was that it had never been about him at all. Are you telling me that I wasn't enough for you? I demanded. That after everything we went through, everything we built together, you didn't know who you were. And you couldn't talk to me about it. You couldn't come to me when you felt lost. She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. I could see it now, the cracks in our relationship that I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just the lies. It was something deeper than that. Something that had been festering for a long time, long before I ever found out about him. I don't know what happened to us, Jack, Kara said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living a life that wasn't mine. I took a step back, the weight of her words crashing down on me. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something even more profound. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had been quietly unraveling herself from me for months, maybe even longer. And you thought this was the answer? I said bitterly. You thought you could just run away from everything we built? From me? I thought I could fix myself by running away, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I thought I could find something that would make me feel whole again. But I was wrong, Jack. I was so wrong. The words were like a punch in the gut. I had never seen Kara like this before, not this broken, not this lost. But at the same time, I didn't know who this woman was anymore. The woman I had married, the woman I had loved, wasn't standing in front of me. She was a stranger. A stranger who had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even begin to process. I took another step back, my chest tightening. My thoughts were clouded by the sheer weight of the moment. Part of me wanted to break down, to collapse into her arms and pretend everything was fine again. But another part of me, the part that had been broken by her betrayal, knew that I couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything she had done. You chose him, I said, the words heavy with finality. You chose him over me. You made your choice, Kara. And now I have to make mine. Her face twisted with desperation, but she didn't speak. She just stood there, her eyes pleading with me, as if hoping I would somehow forgive her, make everything okay. But it was too late for that. I turned toward the door, my hands trembling, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I had to leave. I had to let her go. I'll be moving out tomorrow, I said, my voice cold, distant. It's over. I heard her call my name just as I reached the door, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality I didn't know I was capable of feeling. And as I stepped into the hallway, the weight of the betrayal, the hurt, the years we had spent together, all came crashing down. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, anything, to release the pain that was now consuming me. But as I walked down the stairwell, I realized something, I was finally free. Not from Kara. But from the lies. From the pain she had left me with. I had taken control of my life again, and no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much I wanted to turn back and fix everything, I knew that walking away was the only way I could heal. The first few days were a blur. I didn't know where to go or what to do with myself. The apartment felt too small, too suffocating now, a place where too many memories had been forged, too many moments had slipped away unnoticed. The silence of the space was deafening. No more quiet conversations, no more laughter echoing through the halls, no more shared mornings or late-night talks. Just the emptiness that followed her betrayal, the chasm she had carved into my life. I stayed with a friend for a few days, the kind of friend who didn't ask questions but simply let me crash on his couch. I couldn't face my family yet. They would be disappointed, or worse, they would pity me. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. So I hid away, consumed by my own thoughts, by the emptiness of it all. But the pain of the past few days wasn't the hardest part. It was the question that kept gnawing at me, the question of whether I would ever be able to trust again. Whether I could ever love someone else after Kara had shattered me like this. I couldn't avoid it forever. I had to face it. And so, on the fourth day, I found myself sitting on a bench at that same park, the one where Kara and I had shared so many quiet moments, talking about our future, the house, the children, the life we would build together. I had spent days reliving those moments, wondering where it had gone wrong, wondering how we had gotten to this point. I could still hear the echo of her voice, the words she had whispered when we sat there all those months ago, "I'm not sure if we're enough for each other anymore." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I wasn't going to find the answers I was looking for here, not now, not in this place. The past was gone, and no matter how much I wished I could go back, I couldn't. I had to move forward. But where? And then it hit me. I had been running from this all along. I had been avoiding it, pretending that the past had the power to hold me hostage. But the truth was, I was stronger than that. I had a choice. I could stay stuck in the pain, or I could use it to rebuild myself, to become something better than I was before. I stood up from the bench, a sense of resolution slowly settling over me. It was time to let go. But not just of Kara. Of everything. I had to let go of the version of myself that had lived in the shadow of our marriage. The man I had been when I was defined by her. I took out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't expected to call again. It had been a long time since I had spoken to my old friend, Tom, the one I used to share beers with and talk about everything, the kind of friend who had always been there, even when I was too wrapped up in Kara to notice. "Tom," I said when he answered, the familiar voice on the other end of the line a small comfort. "I need to talk." We met for coffee the next morning. The conversation was simple at first, small talk about work, the weather, anything to avoid the real reason I was there. But after a few minutes, Tom sensed it, the weight in my words when I said, "I don't know who I am anymore. Not without her." He was quiet for a moment, letting the words sink in. "I think you need to stop asking who you were, and start thinking about who you want to be," he said, his tone matter-of-fact, but gentle. "You've spent so much time defining yourself through her, through the marriage, that you forgot who you were before. Who you were when you were whole." His words hit me like a ton of bricks, but they also gave me something I hadn't had in days, clarity. I hadn't been whole in a long time. And the truth was, I wasn't going to find that wholeness in her, or in anyone else. I had to find it in myself. I had to rediscover who I was, beyond the man I had been with Kara. The next few weeks were a slow process of rebuilding, piece by piece. I packed up the apartment, got rid of the things that reminded me of her, and moved into a new place. It wasn't much, just a small one-bedroom with bare walls and little furniture, but it felt like a new beginning. The space was mine. It was empty, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like I could breathe again. But the real breakthrough came one quiet afternoon, when I finally answered one of Kara's calls. It had taken me weeks to build up the strength to do it, and when I heard her voice on the other end, I almost hung up. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to say. I know I hurt you. I can't take that back. But I hope someday you can forgive me." I let the silence stretch between us, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I was expecting. Some part of me wanted to lash out, to scream at her for what she had done. But another part of me, the part that had spent the last few weeks building myself back up, knew that this was the last step in moving on. "I forgive you," I said quietly, my voice steady. "But I can't go back to what we had. It's over, Kara. We're over." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear her choking back a sob. "I understand," she whispered. I just wanted you to know." And then I hung up the phone. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't thought possible, peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from forgetting. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from pretending the past didn't matter. It was a hard-won peace, the kind that came from knowing that I had taken control of my life again. The world hadn't stopped turning when I walked away from Kara. I didn't have to burn everything to the ground to find freedom. Sometimes, all it took was letting go. I stood at the window of my new apartment, the sun setting on a new day, and I finally felt like I could breathe again.